Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I was 16 the year everything changed. Not because of school, not because of growing up, but because of one night that still hits me like a punch to the chest every time I think about it. I grew up in a place called Redford Ridge, a small, almost forgotten town tucked between long stretches of farmland and patches of thick woods that looked black after sunset. People here didn't lock their doors until around 2010. Folks trusted each other too much, the way small towns do. My house sat on a quiet street off Millstone Drive, a neighborhood full of old porches, rusted mailboxes, and pickup trucks that coughed smoke every morning. My dad worked night shifts at the rail yard. My mom rotated between 2 diner jobs, and my little sister spent most evenings watching Disney movies until she fell asleep on the couch. My best friend lived a few blocks away, Callum. He wasn't athletic, wasn't particularly smart, but he was the kind of guy who'd show up at your house at 2 a.m. if you texted, "Yo, you awake?" And that's why he was my best friend. We spent half our childhood exploring the woods behind the ridge. Skinny little trees, shallow creeks, rotting hunting blinds, random beer bottles from teenagers who hung out there before us. Everyone in Redford Ridge grew up around those woods. Most parents treated it like free babysitting. But the woods weren't the same at night. None of us admitted it, but everyone felt the difference. The kind of silence where even wind sounds wrong. That night started out normal. Callum texted me at around 10:14 p.m. "Fire at Jenna's place, you coming?" Jenna was a friend of ours. Blonde, loud, lived on a small farm just outside town. Her bonfires were always the spot because her parents didn't care what anyone did as long as no one burned down the barn. I told Mom I was heading out, and she said the same thing she always said. "Stay on Millstone Road. Don't cut through the woods after dark." Every mom in town said that, and every kid ignored it. By the time I reached Jenna's farm, the fire was rolling bright. Music was playing from someone's old Bluetooth speaker, and everyone smelled like smoke and cheap beer. I didn't drink, neither did Callum, but we liked being there. It made us feel like we were part of something. Around 11:30 p.m. the fire died down. People drifted off in 2s and 3s. Jenna yawned so dramatically that it was basically her saying, "Y'all need to go home." Callum nudged me. "Let's head out," he said, pulling his hoodie tighter. "Yeah, it's cold as hell," I replied. The road back to our neighborhood was long, 40, maybe 45 minutes. Sure, we could have cut through the woods and shaved the walk in half, but there was barely any moonlight, and the trees swallowed everything beyond the first few feet. We stuck to the dirt road instead, gravel crunching under our shoes. At first we were talking. Football, school, a fight that broke out last week at the gas station. But eventually we got quiet. The kind of quiet where you don't even realize you stopped talking. That's when we heard the engine. I noticed the headlights first, far behind us, dull and flickering like the bulbs were on their last legs. Callum stopped walking. "That's a beater," he muttered. "Probably someone heading back to town," I said, trying to sound casual. But the car wasn't speeding up. It was rolling slow. Way too slow. Callum leaned closer to me. "Dude." The car crawled toward us like it had somewhere very specific to be. When it finally reached us, it didn't pass. It stalled right beside us, tires crunching on the gravel as it matched our pace. The window rolled down. The smell hit first. Stale cigarettes and something metallic, like rust or blood. The man leaned toward us. He looked mid-40s, unshaven, sunken eyes, hat pulled low. He didn't smile. "You boys know how to get to Havensbrook?" I frowned. "Havens... what?" "Havensbrook," he repeated. "Never heard of it," Callum said. The man stared at us for a second too long. "You sure?" "Dude, back off," I wanted to say, but I didn't. Something about him made my chest tighten. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, then asked, Hop in. Roads get tricky out here at night. I can drop you home. Callum shook his head immediately. We're good, sir. Sir. We only used sir when we were trying to be polite to someone who scared the hell out of us. The man didn't drive off. He didn't move at all. He just stared. His eyes felt wrong. Not drunk, not high, not sleepy. Just wrong. Like he wasn't fully there. I whispered out of the corner of my mouth, "Keep walking. Don't look at him." We sped up. The car did too. He leaned halfway out the window. "Boys," he said, voice low, "it's not safe out here." That's when I made a mistake. I looked at him, really looked. His eyes were wide, unfocused, like he wasn't seeing us at all, like he was seeing something else entirely. It froze my insides. I didn't even have to say anything. Callum hissed, "Run." And we did. We bolted down the dirt road. My lungs burned immediately, but adrenaline pushed everything else out. The car engine roared behind us, gravel flying. "Cut into the woods," Callum yelled. I didn't want to. The woods at night felt like stepping into a black ocean, but staying on the road was suicide. We veered right, crashing into the trees. Branches slapped my face, roots nearly twisted my ankles, but we ran deeper, deeper, deeper. Behind us, the car skidded to a stop. A car door slammed. Heavy footsteps hit the ground. "He's coming in," Callum whispered sharply. We sprinted blindly through the brush until we found a massive oak. We crouched behind it, both of us shaking uncontrollably. The forest was dead silent, until it wasn't. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps, slow, heavy, intentional, getting closer. We pressed against the bark, barely breathing. The steps stopped. He was maybe 30 to 40 feet away. We could see him through the branches, a shadow backlit by the faint moonlight, head moving side to side like he was sniffing the air. Sniffing. I felt tears gathering in my eyes. He muttered something then, quiet, almost like talking to himself. "They always come through the trees. Always." My blood turned to ice. Callum squeezed my forearm, silently begging me not to move. The man stood there for what felt like an hour, then abruptly turned and walked the other direction. We didn't move. We didn't breathe. 5 minutes. 10. Finally, Callum whispered, "Now. Slow. Stay low." We crept backward through the brush, moving in the opposite direction he had gone. Every sound felt too loud. A snapped twig sounded like a gunshot. After what felt like forever, the trees thinned and we saw faint porch lights from houses. The moment we broke out of the woods, we ran again, all the way down Millstone Drive, past mailboxes and fences, not stopping until we reached my house. My mom opened the door, half asleep, hair messy. "Jesus, why are you two crying?" We told her everything, tripping over our words. She turned pale. She called the police immediately. 2 deputies came, Deputy Hollis and Deputy Briggs. Hollis took notes while Briggs kept looking between me and Callum like he was deciding whether to believe us. Hollis asked, "You sure he chased you into the woods?" "He was right behind us," I said. "And this town," he said. "Havensbrook?" We both nodded. Hollis exchanged a look with Briggs. "Never heard of it," Briggs muttered. Search teams checked the area until sunrise. They found tire marks on the dirt road, boot prints leading into the woods, but no man, no car, nothing. The next day at school, everyone treated us like we were exaggerating. Typical small-town behavior. If something doesn't fit their picture of reality, they pretend it doesn't exist. But something strange happened a week later. Dad came home from night shift, dropped his lunchbox on the counter and said quietly, "Saw a car last night. Old, beat to hell, parked on Millstone, engine running, lights off." Mom froze. "Did you call it in?" "Yeah, but when I turned around to get the tag number, thing was gone." Over the next month, more people saw that same old car, always at night, always driving slow, always watching, never long enough for anyone to approach. Then it disappeared again. Life slowly went back to normal, but we never walked that road at night again. 8 years passed. Callum moved to Texas. I stayed in Redford Ridge, working maintenance at a factory. One night last year, Dad and I were watching TV when a news story came on. Unidentified man found dead in rural forest area near Havensbrook County. My heart stopped. Havensbrook County. Dad turned to me slowly. That the same name he said? Yeah, I whispered. Except here's the thing. There is no town called Havensbrook, just a county way up north, hours and hours away, and it hasn't had towns in decades. Old mining place, mostly abandoned. The reporter mentioned one detail that made my mouth go dry. Man was found near a rusted-out sedan. Authorities believe it may have been used as shelter. A photo appeared on the screen. An old, destroyed car. Same shape, same dented fender, same busted headlight. Dad muttered, "Holy shit." The news said the man had been dead for maybe a week, which raised the question, if that guy in the woods died last week, who was driving that car the night we were chased? And who had been seen around our neighborhood? Who had been watching? I still don't know. Nobody does. All I know is that when the wind hits a certain way at night, especially near the woods, I swear I can hear gravel crunching, like slow footsteps, or the roll of old tires, searching. I was halfway through my second cup of stale gas station coffee when I started thinking, once again, about how much I hated long-distance drives. It wasn't that I hated traveling itself. I actually liked the way the highway hummed under the wheels, the long stretches of forest on both sides, the way the radio faded in and out like it couldn't decide if it wanted to keep me company. But what I hated was the reason I had to make these trips. Ever since I'd moved to Ashbury Heights, Ohio, my parents had been reminding me, gently at first, more insistently later, that I needed to come home more often. They lived in Wellington Ridge, Washington, the same small town I grew up in, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody else and people still waved from their porches when you drove by. 8 times a year, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, I ended up making that 32-hour drive. And for the last 2 years, I hadn't been doing it alone. My cousin Juliet lived in Ashbury Heights too. She'd moved there after college and rented a little apartment 2 blocks from mine. Since neither of us were exactly rolling in money, she always hitched a ride with me for the holiday trips. She was the kind of person who filled every silence, who narrated whatever was happening as if she were a podcast host and I was her only listener. Normally, it didn't bother me, but today she was quiet, too quiet. "You good?" I asked, glancing at her. "You've barely said a word since we left the state line." Juliet shrugged without looking up from her phone. "Yeah, just tired, I guess." "From what? You literally slept until we got in the car." "Okay, well, emotionally tired," she muttered, tapping at her phone. "Life is exhausting." "That's the most relatable thing you've ever said." She snorted, but it didn't have the usual energy. Something was off. But I didn't push. Juliet never liked admitting when something was bothering her. And honestly, neither did I. We drove for another 2 hours before the weather shifted. The sky darkened in that sudden way it does when you're close to the mountains, like someone dimmed the world with a giant switch. The wind picked up, rattling the car a little, and the temperature dropped enough that I had to turn the heater back on. "Man," Juliet muttered, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. "Feels like the holiday season is slapping us in the face this year." "We'll stop in a bit," I said. "Get real food, not gas station beef jerky and whatever that sad excuse for a donut was." "That donut was a hate crime," she said. I laughed. For a moment, things felt normal. Then we saw the sign. "Welcome to Harrow Creek, exit 217, food, gas, lodging." Juliet perked up. "Hey, finally, I'm starving, can we stop?" I was thinking the same thing. The town name sounded familiar. but I couldn't place it. Maybe I had passed through once years ago. Maybe our parents had mentioned it. Maybe I'd seen it in some news article. I didn't know. But something about the word Harrow made the back of my neck itch. We turned off the highway. The exit ramp curved into a narrow road that cut through a stretch of dark pine trees. After half a mile, the woods opened up into a small valley. Harrow Creek wasn't so much a town as a cluster of buildings arranged like someone had dropped them at random and hoped for the best. A laundromat with a busted sign, a general store with boarded windows, a motel with a flickering vacancy sign, and near the center of it all, a diner. A small squat building with peeling blue paint, a sagging roof, and a neon sign that sputtered like it was being electrocuted. Cute, Juliet said sarcastically. Totally doesn't look like a place where they serve pancakes and murder. Stop watching true crime podcasts at night. Never. The parking lot had only 3 cars, a rusty pickup, a minivan that looked abandoned, and a dark SUV with tinted windows. I parked next to the pickup. Juliet unbuckled but didn't get out. She was staring at the diner. "You ever get a feeling," she said slowly, like a place doesn't want you there? Every Monday at work. I'm serious. I sighed. Yeah, a little. The truth was, my stomach had been tightening since we rolled into town. Something in the air felt heavy, like when a storm is about to hit. Except the sky was clear here, unnaturally clear, like Harrow Creek was under a dome separate from the weather we had just driven through. "Let's just grab food and go," I said. "We'll be in and out." She nodded. We got out of the car. The bell above the door jingled as we stepped inside. It was like walking into a vacuum-sealed memory. Everything looked old, not retro, not vintage, just old. The yellowed pictures, the grease-stained counter, the linoleum floors with faded patterns. The smell of fried onions clung to the air like a permanent guest. A middle-aged waitress looked up from pouring coffee. She wore a name tag that read, Marlene, though the letters were half scratched off. "Hey there," she said, her voice raspy like she'd smoked since the womb. "Sit wherever." We took a booth by the window. 2 truckers sat at the counter. An elderly man sipped coffee in a corner booth, and a young woman with a toddler sat by the door, trying to get the kid to stop smacking a spoon on the table. The atmosphere wasn't lively, but it wasn't dead either, just strange. Marlene came over. "What can I get you?" "I'll do the cheeseburger," I said. "Fries and a Coke." She nodded. "And I'll have the grilled cheese," Juliet said. "Extra crispy, and a Sprite." "You got it." She scribbled something on her pad and walked off. Juliet let out a long breath. "Okay, we're eating. We're fine. This is fine." "You're talking like someone who's trying to convince herself." "Because I am." Our food arrived quicker than expected. I had just lifted the burger when the diner door burst open. I didn't jump. I flinched. Hard. Juliet grabbed the edge of the table so tight her knuckles went white. A man rushed inside. He wore black clothes, dirty, mismatched layers, and a hood pulled low over his face. A dark bandana covered the lower half. His boots thudded against the floor like he weighed more than he looked. He walked straight to the counter. "Jesus," one of the truckers muttered. "Here we go." The man slammed his hand on the counter. "Money," he snarled. Marlene froze. "Sir." "Don't make me ask again." His other hand came up, holding a gun. A real one. Not shiny, not new. Old, scratched. But a real gun all the same. My heart dropped into my stomach. Juliet's mouth fell open, but no sound came out. The elderly man in the corner whispered, "Oh Lord." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Marlene's hand shook violently as she opened the register. "Hurry up," he snapped. I'm trying," she stuttered. The toddler by the door started crying. "Shut that kid up," the man barked. The young mother clutched her child against her chest. Please, he's just scared." I said, "Shut him up." I felt Juliet's hand slide under the table. She gripped my knee, hard. Marlene finally yanked out a handful of bills and held them out with trembling fingers. The man snatched the money, turned, and ran out the door. The moment he disappeared, the diner erupted into chaos. The mother sobbed. The toddler wailed. One trucker cursed loudly. The other tried to calm him down. The elderly man stared blankly like he'd seen this before. But then, sirens, loud, close, too close. I turned and looked out the window and saw the robber sprinting across the street. He made it halfway before two police cruisers swerved onto the road, blocking his path. Officers jumped out, yelling commands. "Drop the weapon!" The man turned, panicked, the gun shaking in his hand, and he was tackled to the ground. Within seconds, he was handcuffed. It was over. Just like that. We stayed long enough to give our statements. The officers seemed grateful for the help. Apparently, the guy had been hitting gas stations along 2 counties for months. But something felt off. Not about the robbery, not about the gun, not about the police. Something about the town. The officers looked tired, hollow-eyed. The residents looked resigned, like this wasn't shocking at all. Like Harrow Creek expected things to go wrong. Like it lived on things going wrong. When we finally got back to my car, Juliet buckled in silently. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. But she wasn't okay. Neither was I. We drove in silence for a long time. But about 10 minutes outside town, Juliet finally spoke. Very quietly. "Did you see the SUV in the lot?" "Yeah." "The one with the tinted windows?" "Yeah." "It wasn't there when we left?" I frowned. "Sure it was." "No," she whispered, twisting her fingers anxiously. "It wasn't. I noticed because it had no plates." I turned my head sharply. "What?" "And when we were talking to the police," her voice broke slightly, "I saw someone sitting in the driver's seat, watching us." My stomach tightened. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I didn't know if I imagined it," she said, voice shaking. "And I was scared if I said it out loud, it'd make it real." I didn't respond, because I didn't know what to say. We drove until Harrow Creek was nothing more than a memory in the rearview mirror. At least, that's what I hoped it would become. But memories don't always stay where you leave them, especially not the ones born in places like Harrow Creek. By the time I dropped Juliet off at her parents' place, she looked pale. "You sure you're good?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. But she didn't move to get out. After a long pause, she added, "Do me a favor?" "Anything. Don't tell your parents what I said about the SUV. Just don't. I don't want anyone thinking I'm losing it." "You're not losing it." But she didn't look convinced. She got out, waved half-heartedly, and went inside. I didn't get out of the car, didn't even turn off the engine. I just wanted to get home, to sleep, to forget. But when I finally got to my apartment and lay down, exhaustion didn't bring peace. It brought nightmares of the diner lights flickering, of the gun in the man's hand, of the SUV, of the face, not fully visible, just a hint of pale skin beneath tinted glass, watching us as we left the crime scene. I didn't sleep well that night, not because of the robbery, not because of the drive, not even because of the SUV, but because when I woke up, somewhere around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a notification, a news alert. Breaking. Harrow Creek resident found dead in ditch hours after robbery. The preview showed only the headline and the small location banner beneath. But I knew. I knew before I even opened it that whatever had happened, it wasn't over. And when I finally tapped the notification, a picture loaded slowly. A shaky, zoomed-in shot of the crime scene. A ditch, squad cars, blue lights reflecting off wet pavement, and in the background, barely visible, an SUV with tinted windows. The same one from the diner lot, parked behind the police tape, facing the camera, like it wanted to be seen, like it wanted me to know. This wasn't random. This wasn't over. This wasn't just a wrong place, wrong time moment. Harrow Creek had seen us, and Harrow Creek wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I never imagined that going back to my mother's hometown would end with a gun in my face, the smell of gravel dusting the inside of my lungs, and my own voice cracking like a teenager's as I begged grown men not to kill me. But I guess I should start before all that. I grew up in Rochester, New York, but half my childhood sounded like a different country. My mom, Elena, came from a tiny mountain town in North Carolina called Willow Creek. When she left for college, she swore she'd never go back. Something about family drama and old grudges, the kind of vague phrases adults toss out like breadcrumbs, so curious kids don't starve. Still, she kept the culture alive in the house. The food, the way she spoke certain phrases, the little stories she told when she thought nobody else was listening. When I was young, I used to catch her humming these soft old Appalachian lullabies while she cooked. When she died in 2017, something hollow opened inside me. I kept feeling like I didn't know where she came from, like I only had the outline of her life before me, not the full picture. So in my late 20s, after putting it off for too long, I finally decided to visit Willow Creek, meet the side of the family she'd left behind, learn who she was before I knew her. But Willow Creek wasn't on any tourist map. It was one of those places where cars rust on front lawns like lawn ornaments, where the diner is also the post office, where kids grow up fast and adults grow old faster. Still, I wanted to go. After landing in Charlotte, I rented a little dusty blue Hyundai that looked like it might cry at any steep incline. I grabbed a paper map too because my cousin had warned me. Cell service dies out quick. Don't trust Google Maps. So I started driving northwest, past rolling hills, past rusted barns, past churches so old they leaned like drunk uncles at a barbecue. By the time I hit the back roads, the sun was lowering into the trees like it was trying to hide. I was maybe 30 minutes away from Willow Creek when I saw the lights. Red, white, blue, flashing hard in my mirror. For a second, my brain froze. I'm not speeding. Am I? I checked. Nope. 45 and a 45. Still, the cruiser behind me blared its siren so loud it rattled my teeth. All right, I whispered, pulling over to the gravel shoulder. I rehearsed my lines in my head. Hello, officer. I'm visiting family. Here's my ID. Simple, polite, non-life-threatening. But the officer didn't get out. He flung his door open and immediately ducked behind it in a defensive stance. He had his gun drawn. I froze. My hands went instinctively to the steering wheel as if the car itself were a life raft. A loudspeaker crackled. "Driver, put your hands out the window where we can see them now." His voice boomed across the trees. My stomach flipped. My heart started pounding in my throat. "Holy shit," I whispered. I pushed my hands out, palms trembling. Cold air bit my skin. Another command erupted from the speaker. "Keep your hands high and do not move. Do not reach. Do not speak unless spoken to." I swallowed hard. "Officer, quiet." I shut my mouth so fast my teeth clicked. My pulse hammered so loud I could barely hear him approach. Leaves cracked under heavy boots. Gravel shifted. My breath misted the window as I tried not to move, not to blink too forcefully, not to exist in any threatening shape. He reached my window and pointed the gun directly at my head, his hand shaking just enough to terrify me. He was young, maybe mid-30s, red beard, pale skin, eyes wide with adrenaline. "Driver, keep those hands where they are." His voice cracked slightly. "You make one wrong move and this whole thing goes sideways, you understand?" My throat bobbed. "Yes, sir. Yes, please. I'm unarmed. I'm just visiting family. My name is... Don't care, not right now." He holstered his gun with one hand and fumbled for his cuffs with the other, still keeping his body angled like he expected me to explode. "Slowly open your door with your left hand. Slowly." My fingers shook so violently I missed the handle twice. As soon as the door cracked open, he grabbed my arm, twisting it behind my back so fast pain shot into my shoulder. "Jesus, sir, that hurts." "Quiet," he barked again. He cuffed me hard, metal digging deep. Then he yanked me out of the car and shoved me to my knees. My cheeks smashed into cold gravel. By then, at least 4 more police cruisers had appeared, kicking up dust. Doors slammed, boots thundered, voices overlapped. "There he is. Matches the description. Get him secured. Do not let him run." I felt a knee press into my spine. Someone grabbed my hair to lift my head. "Look at him," a deputy muttered. "Same damn eyes. That's him." "That's the bastard," another said under his breath. My breathing turned into shallow gasps. I wanted to scream that they had the wrong guy, that I was nobody, that I'd never even been here before. But every time I opened my mouth, "Shut it. Quiet. Don't speak unless I tell you." They hauled me up and shoved me into the back of a cruiser. No seatbelt, no time. The door slammed so hard the window trembled. The drive to the station blurred in panic. My cuffed hands throbbed. My chest felt tight enough to crack. Every second felt like a countdown to some unknown catastrophe. Inside the station, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry insects. One older officer pointed at me and muttered under his breath, "That him?" A younger deputy nodded. "Yeah, spittin' image." They marched me through the hall like I was radioactive. I kept trying to explain. "Please, I swear, I'm from New York. I'm just here to..." A deputy slammed his baton against the bars as they shoved me into a cell. "Listen here, buddy," he growled. "If you think playing dumb is gonna help when we already know who you are, you must think we're idiots." "I'm not. I swear I'm not who you think." "Save it." He locked the cell with a metallic clang that echoed through my bones. Hours crawled by like trapped insects. Officers walked past, sometimes glaring, sometimes whispering, sometimes stepping close to the bars. One, a tall guy with a shaved head, looked at me with a disgust I didn't understand. "I got kids," he said, his voice low. "If you did what they say you did, you're lucky we brought you in alive." I shook my head so hard it made me dizzy. "I didn't do anything. I didn't even know anyone here. I was..." He slammed his palm against the bars and shouted, "Shut your damn mouth." I flinched so hard I hit the back wall. Eventually the noises dwindled. The station got quieter. My breathing didn't. I leaned my forehead against the bars, shaking. Every sound felt like judgment. Every footstep felt like doom. Then out of nowhere, keys jingled. The tall deputy reappeared, but this time his expression looked stunned, almost embarrassed, like someone had kicked the floor out from under him. He unlocked the cell slowly. "Stand up," he said. I did, legs trembling. "There's been a mistake." My brain stuttered. "What? You're not the guy we thought you were." He couldn't even look me in the eye. "You're free to go." That was it. They uncuffed me, handed me my wallet, told me my rental car was still in the lot. As I walked down the hallway, officers avoided eye contact, or worse, smirked as if the whole thing were a harmless inconvenience. "Crazy mix-up," one said. "Should have double-checked the plate number," another chuckled. "Hell of a resemblance, though," someone added. My hands curled into fists. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to ask if nearly blowing my head off counted as a mix-up. But I stayed quiet, because if I didn't, part of me was terrified they'd find a reason to drag me right back inside. At the front desk, an older officer slid a printed photo toward me. "This is the individual we mistook you for." I looked. My stomach dropped. He looked just like me. Same eyes, same jawline, same hair. He even wore glasses similar to mine. But his expression, void, cold, predatory. A violent fugitive wanted for things I refused to even repeat. I stared at that photo so long my eyes stung. "Sorry about the trouble," the older officer said, scratching his neck. "Ain't much we can do now. You're free to leave." I walked out of the station shaking, my throat tight, the sky outside too bright and too big. Willow Creek's air felt poisoned. Or maybe it was just me. I drove straight to my relative's house, still trembling. When I told them what happened, they laughed. Actually laughed and said, "Compensation? From this town? Honey, not a chance." I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. I stayed in Willow Creek a few days. The family was warm, the food comforting, the mountains beautiful. But something inside me was cracked. I left North Carolina with a new understanding. Sometimes the scariest part of the world isn't ghosts or monsters or shadows in the woods. Sometimes it's people who think they already know who you are. I haven't been back since, and next time, if I ever go again, I'm getting family to pick me up from the damn airport. I was 14 when all this happened, and even now, as a grown man, I can still smell that summer air whenever I think about it, that mix of cut hay, diesel trucks rolling past on County Route 7, and the muddy scent that came off the river behind our town whenever the wind shifted just right. I grew up in Hawthorne Ridge, a tiny farming community tucked between cornfields and forests in the northern Midwest. Population back then? Maybe 1,000 if you counted the dogs. Folks joked that if someone sneezed downtown, someone sitting on their porch at the far end of town yelled, "Bless you," before the echo even faded. My name is Colton Reeves, and for most of my childhood, Hawthorne Ridge felt like the safest place in the world. People left their doors unlocked, kids rode their bikes until midnight in the summer, and nobody thought twice about strangers because, well, we rarely had any. But there was one thing that made our town different from the dozens of other farm towns scattered around the region: the rail line. Hawthorne Ridge had the only functioning train stop for miles, and because of that, we got the occasional drifter folks passing through, hitching rides, looking for work, or just looking for somewhere to sleep for the night. Most of them were harmless. Some worked a temp job, earned a few bucks, and moved on. But once in a while, someone passed through who wasn't harmless at all. The summer this happened was the hottest I ever remembered. It was 2010, right around the 4th of July week. The kind of heat that made you stick to everything: your clothes, your bed sheets, the metal swings in the schoolyard. That schoolyard was home base for me and my two closest friends, Toby Harkins and Luke Brenner. Toby was wiry and loud-mouthed, one of those kids who talked big but shook like a leaf during thunderstorms. Luke was quieter, taller than both of us, the type of kid everyone trusted with their secrets. And me? I was somewhere in the middle. Not brave, not cowardly, just typical. But that summer changed how I saw everything: my friends, my town, and the world outside it. And it all started one late night that should have been harmless. It was a little after 11. Maybe closer to midnight time, kind of blurred back then. My mom had just finished yelling through the screen door that she didn't want me out. Past all hours. Her favorite phrase. My dad chimed in from the living room with, "Be home by 12:30, bud," which I took as permission to stretch it to 1. I hopped on my bike and pedaled toward the schoolyard, passing the same landmarks I saw every day. The old Texaco station, with only one functioning pump, the post office that closed at 4 sharp, and the single street light that flickered like it had PTSD. By the time I reached the school, I could already see Toby and Luke sitting on the swings, passing a lighter back and forth like they were doing something illegal, even though it was just a single cigarette Toby had stolen from his older brother. "About time," Toby said, grinning at me. "We were starting to think your mama locked you in the basement." "Shut up," I said, dropping my bike next to the fence. Had to wait for her to finish ranting. Luke smirked. "She worries 'cause she loves you, dude." Yeah. I rolled my eyes but smiled. It was true, and I missed those days now, but back then, hearing it just made me feel like a baby. We spent a good hour just talking about dumb stuff, the kind of things teenage boys think are life or death important. Girls we liked, kids at school we didn't, whether the ice cream place would hire us when we turned 15. But around midnight, the moon ducked behind a thick patch of clouds, and the whole playground went dark. Not pitch black, but dim, like everything had been dipped in dark blue paint. That was when Luke suddenly froze. "Yo," he whispered, pointing past the monkey bars. "Someone's over there." Toby laughed nervously. "Bullshit, quit messing." "I'm not messing," Luke said, his voice low. "Look." I turned my head and sure enough, someone was walking toward us. A man. He came out of the shadows so silently I couldn't figure out how none of us saw him before. He wasn't drunk, not stumbling or swaying. Just walking steady, straight, like he'd been heading for us the entire time. As he got closer, the dim moonlight finally lit up his face. He looked to be mid-40s, maybe older. Shaggy hair that looked sun-fried and brittle. A beard that wasn't quite full, mostly gray with streaks of brown. His t-shirt was stained with something dark oil maybe, and his jeans were ripped around the knees. He looked like someone who'd been living rough for a long time. "Evening, boys," he said in a voice that was too smooth, too friendly. "Out kinda late, ain't ya?" Toby swallowed hard. Just hanging out, sir." The man grinned, showing teeth that looked like old piano keys. Yellow, cracked, uneven. "Schoolyard's a pretty chill spot," he said, stuffing his hands in his pockets. "Played in places like this when I was your age. Guess things don't change much, huh?" Something about the way he talked, too casual, too practiced, made my stomach twist. The man kept standing there, not blinking much, just watching each of us in turn like we were items on a shelf he was thinking of buying. "What's your names?" he asked. Luke immediately said, "We're supposed to head home, actually." The man tilted his head. "Didn't ask where you were going. Asked your names." Nobody answered. He chuckled, a slow, raspy sound like sandpaper rubbing together. "Aw, relax. I ain't a cop. That's kind of the point." Toby muttered under his breath. "What was that?" the man asked, stepping closer. "Nothing," Toby said quickly, shifting back on his swing. I felt the first real jolt of fear run up my spine. This guy wasn't just a random drifter. Something about his eyes wide, hungry, never settling, made every instinct in my body scream that we needed to get the hell away. But we didn't run. Not yet. Because kids are stupid, and we didn't want to look scared. The man walked a slow circle around us like he was inspecting the place, then stopped and smiled again. "You boys want to see something cool?" he asked, voice oily. "No thank you," I said, my voice sharp. "We really gotta go home." His smile faded. Then he reached into his pocket slow, like he wanted us to watch. I swear I saw something metallic reflect the moonlight as he moved. A blade. And that was when it happened, that moment where childhood ends and instinct takes over. "Run!" I screamed, and all three of us scattered like birds shot at. I didn't look back, not once. I tore across the baseball field, cutting through the overgrown grass behind the bleachers. My lungs burned, my legs felt like rubber bands about to snap, but I didn't stop. Every horror story, every warning my mom ever gave me slammed together in my head like thunder. By the time my house came into view, I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. I burst through the front door so fast I crashed into the hallway table and knocked over a photo frame. "Colton," my mom shouted, running from the bedroom. "Honey, what happened? Why are you crying?" I tried speaking, but all that came out was choking gasps. My dad appeared behind her. "Let him breathe, Carla. Give him a sec." It took a full minute before I could speak in full sentences. There was a man. At the school. He had something. A knife, I think. He came at us and my mom covered her mouth. Oh my God. My dad didn't waste a second. He grabbed the landline, calling the sheriff. Within 10 minutes, 2 cruisers showed up, lights flashing down my whole street. An officer named Deputy Langford came inside and had me sit at the table with a cold glass of water. "Start from the top, son," he said, his voice calm but strict. "Leave nothing out." I told him everything. My friends had already called from their houses too, giving the same story. The officers searched until dawn around the schoolyard, behind the bus barn, along the creek trail, but they didn't find him. But the next day, they found something else. A campsite, hidden deep in the trees south of town. Inside the tent, empty beer cans, a sleeping bag so filthy it looked black, a rusted lantern, food wrappers, and according to my dad, who overheard a deputy whispering a pile of kids' items, shoelaces, buttons, bottle caps, a sticker from a children's book, a small plastic charm bracelet, items that didn't belong to any kid in our town. That's when everyone realized This man wasn't just passing through. He'd been watching, hiding, maybe for a long time. Word spread faster than wildfire. Parents suddenly started walking their kids to school again. People locked their doors, some for the first time in their lives. My mom even put a chair under the front doorknob at night like we lived in downtown Chicago. Every day, someone said they spotted the man near the tracks, or behind the diner, or sitting in a truck that didn't belong to anyone. All of them were false alarms. But nobody slept easy. Toby had nightmares so bad he'd call me at 2 a.m. just to talk. Luke stopped hanging out altogether, stayed home every night, barely spoke in school. Me? I jumped every time I heard leaves crunch. But the police never found the man. And eventually, weeks turned into months. Months turned into a year. Life slowly went back to normal. Or at least, as normal as it could. But here's the part I've never told anyone. Not Toby. Not Luke. Not my parents. One night about 6 months later in the dead of winter, when snow had covered everything in sight and the town felt quiet enough to hear the streetlights buzz, I heard something outside my window. A single, sharp whistle. 3 notes. Soft. Deliberate. Like someone trying to get a kid's attention. I froze in my bed, staring at the frosted glass. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't dare look. The whistle came again. And then, footsteps crunching in the snow. Slow. Steady. Leaving. Not approaching. The next morning, I checked the yard. There were footprints in the snow. One set, leading up to my window. And then, leading away. My dad saw them, frowned, and said, "Damn, deer must have walked close to the house last night. But deer don't walk in straight lines. And deer don't whistle." I never slept with my blinds open again. The following summer, a full year after the schoolyard night, the story nearly faded into rumor. The man? A ghost from last year. An urban legend in the making. Until one night, the sheriff got an anonymous tip about a man living in an abandoned tool shed behind the grain elevator. They searched the place. Inside, they found blankets, canned food, fresh shoe prints, a dull pocket knife, and a map of Hawthorne Ridge, with the school circled in red marker, and the train schedule written in shaky handwriting along the side. But there was more. Pinned to the inside wall was a photo. Old, faded, weather-worn. A photo of 3 boys sitting on the school swings. Me, Toby, Luke, taken from behind the bushes. It wasn't a coincidence. He'd been watching us long before he ever approached. The sheriff launched a county-wide search, calling in state patrol, bloodhounds, even volunteers. They never found him. Some said he hopped a freight train and died of exposure somewhere in the Dakotas. Some said he drowned in the river. Some said he came back years later and watched us from the woods. Older, sicker, hungrier. Nobody knows. But I know this. 3 days after they found that shed, a single sheet of notebook paper was slipped under our front door. One sentence written in messy handwriting. "See y'all again someday." To this day, I don't know if it was real or some kid trying to scare me. But the handwriting, it looked exactly like the writing on the map. Even after we moved, even after I grew up, even after Toby joined the army and Luke moved to Chicago and I left for college, I never forgot those words. I still lock every window at night. I still check behind my curtains twice before going to bed. And every once in a while, on quiet nights, when the wind shifts and it gets too still, I swear I hear it again. That whistle, 3 notes. Soft, patient, like someone is waiting, watching, remembering, just like I do. I grew up in a quiet little place called Birch Hollow, a rural lake town tucked deep into northern Michigan. One of those towns that wasn't on any tourist map but somehow everyone had heard of in that vague, "Oh yeah, I think I passed through there once," kind of way. It wasn't big. It wasn't fancy. It had one grocery store, a bait shop that doubled as a breakfast joint, a volunteer fire department, and a 4th of July parade where the same 10 floats dragged themselves down Main Street every year. People in Birch Hollow love to say things like, "This town ain't much, but it's home." Or, "You break down on the side of the road, someone will come help you." whether you want it or not. It was that kind of place, simple, predictable, wrapped in its own charm. But there was something else about Birch Hollow too, something quieter, something that only people who lived there long enough ever really felt. A heaviness, like the woods watched you back, like the lake kept secrets, like certain things had happened there and no one liked to talk about them. When I was a kid, I didn't think too hard about any of that. I was just happy to have summers free, bikes to ride, woods to explore, and a little sister who followed me everywhere. Her name was Lena, older than me by a year, but somehow more cautious, more thoughtful, more grounded. I always joked that she got the logical half of the brain, and I got the half that made me jump into trouble without thinking. My parents worked normal jobs, dad at the lumber yard, mom at the school cafeteria, but once a year, every summer without fail, we'd spend a week at my aunt's lake cabin a few miles outside town. The cabin sat on the shore of Clearwater Cove, a calm stretch of Lake Superior with sand so pale it looked fake on cloudy days. The place smelled like cedar beams, old books, and the faint dusty scent of summers long past. The kind of smell you could close your eyes and remember. We loved it there. The fireplace popped at night. Cicadas buzzed in the tall grass. The screen door squeaked every time someone opened it. My aunt refused to fix it because she said the squeak was part of the house. Those weeks always felt perfect. Until that one summer. The one that still knots my stomach when I think about it. The one that made my mom lock the shed for good. The one that showed us how wrong things could go when you stumble into something you were never meant to find. I was 11. Lena was 12. And the cabin didn't feel like a safe place after that. It was the second day of the vacation when it happened, before anything bad, before anything strange, before anything that made the adults whisper in the kitchen when they thought we weren't listening. That morning had started normal enough. I remember waking up to the sound of loons calling across the water, sunlight slipping through the blinds in thin gold stripes. Breakfast was pancakes. My aunt always added way too many chocolate chips, but none of us dared complain. Afterward, we played cards, bickered about whose turn it was to wash dishes, and eventually, like every summer, ended up begging my aunt for her metal detector. It was this old, beat-up device from the 80 seconds with peeling stickers on the side and a handle wrapped with faded black tape. It beeped at bottle caps, nails, soda tabs, pieces of random scrap metal, nothing valuable. But for us, it felt like treasure hunting, and treasure hunting felt like adventure. My aunt laughed and handed it over with a warning. "Stay where I can see you from the porch, all right? None of that wandering down past the dunes. You hear me?" Lena answered like she always did. "Yes, ma'am. We won't go far." I said nothing. Partly because I didn't want to ruin our chance. Partly because I already knew we'd push the boundary. Not dangerously, just enough to feel like we were getting away with something. By noon, the sun was bright and warm, and we headed down the path behind the cabin. I walked ahead with the metal detector, and Lena followed, holding a plastic bucket filled with our finds, mostly rusty junk, shell fragments, and the occasional cool pebble. "Bet we find something good today," I said. "Like a ring or a cool old coin. Or maybe you just find more junk," she teased. "You're like magnetically attracted to trash." "Shut up," I laughed. We walked along the shoreline for a while, waves rolling in with that slow, soothing rhythm that makes you forget how dangerous water can be. The air tasted like lake mist and warm sand. Boats hummed faintly somewhere in the distance. Everything felt normal, safe, the way summer always felt when you're a kid. But then, the metal detector beeped. Not the quick, jittery beep it made over bottle caps. This was slower, heavier, a long, thick beep that vibrated up the handle. "Oh shoot," I muttered. "This is something big. Probably just a chunk of metal," Lena said, but she leaned in anyway. I knelt down and dug with my hands. The sand was damp under the top layer and smelled earthy, like rain hitting old wood. A few inches down, my fingers hit something solid. At first I thought it was a toy. Then I lifted it, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't a toy. It wasn't plastic. It wasn't light. It was a gun. A full-size, cold metal handgun, buried in the sand. "What the?" I whispered. Lena's face went pale. She took a small step back. "Hey, put that down," she said quickly. "Seriously, put it down." Her voice wasn't yelling. It wasn't panicked. It wasn't even loud. It was scared. Truly scared. Why? It's probably fake. No, it's not. She swallowed hard. I can tell. It's real. I don't know how, but it is. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. Lena wasn't easily spooked. I placed it back in the hole gently, like it might explode if I dropped it. What do we do? I whispered. Tell Mom and Dad, she said instantly. Yeah, okay. We didn't run. We didn't scream. We didn't even talk on the way back. We just walked fast, silent, tense. My parents were sitting on the porch of the cabin, Dad drinking coffee, Mom reading one of those crime novels she tore through like candy. Lena spoke first. Mom. My dad lowered his mug. What kind of something? A gun, I said quietly. Dad blinked. A what? Come on, kiddo, you probably found a toy. It wasn't a toy, Lena said. It was heavy. My parents exchanged quick looks, parent looks, loaded with all the silent questions they didn't want us to hear. Show me, Dad finally said. The walk back to the spot felt longer with him behind us. When he saw the gun half buried in sand, his whole expression changed, eyes sharper, posture rigid. Jesus, he muttered. He picked it up, weighed it, eyed the chamber. Yeah, he said. This is real. Then, kids, step back. We obeyed immediately. He wasn't calm. He wasn't angry. He was alert. That was the second warning sign. My dad called the sheriff's office from the cabin phone. They arrived quick, Birch Hollow cops always did. 2 deputies pulled up in a dusty cruiser, stepped out, and walked down to the beach with us. Deputy Mulligan, the older one, whistled under his breath. Well, ain't that a thing, he said. Good eye, kids. They took the gun carefully, wrapped it in a cloth, and brought it back up to the car. We'll take it back to the station, Mulligan said. Figure out what the hell it's doing out here. But before he shut the cruiser door, he looked at my dad. You know anything about that break-in last spring? He asked quietly. My dad stiffened. Only what everyone else heard. Mulligan nodded like that was enough, then drove off. I didn't understand the meaning then. I do now. A robbery. A shooting. A suspect who vanished. Something that never sat right with the townsfolk. But that day I was still a kid, and I didn't know the third warning sign was coming. That evening felt off. The air felt thicker. The woods seemed louder. Even the waves sounded different, slapping the shore with a heavier rhythm. During dinner, I remember this so clearly my aunt tried to joke around like nothing happened. Well, hey, at least you didn't find a dead body, she said with a forced laugh. My mom shot her a look. Not helping, June. We all laughed anyway, but the sound was thin. Later that night, I overheard my parents whispering in the kitchen. You think whoever had that thing could still be around? Mom whispered. Dad paused before answering. I don't know. But we're keeping the kids close. I remember lying awake in the bunk above Lena, staring at the ceiling beams as the house settled around us. The lake breeze rattled the windows. An owl hooted in the distance. Every normal sound felt suddenly suspicious. Lena whispered from below me. You awake? Yeah. You think someone left that gun there on purpose? I hesitated. Maybe they dropped it. No, she whispered. It was buried. I didn't have an answer. She didn't speak again after that, but I heard her toss and turn long after I fell asleep. The next day was cloudy. The lake was rough. The whole place felt like it was holding its breath. We weren't allowed to go treasure hunting. We weren't allowed to explore the dunes. We weren't allowed even near the tall grass. Every adult was on edge. But the strangest part was that my dad stayed outside on the porch all day. He acted like he was reading a magazine, but he kept scanning the tree line every few minutes. Around late afternoon, something happened. I was helping my aunt chop vegetables in the kitchen. I could see the woods through the window above the sink. The trees swayed in the wind, the sky darkening above them. Then, for just a second, I saw someone. Not clearly, not close, just a shape, a human figure standing between the trees, half hidden in the shadows, watching the cabin. I blinked hard. When I looked again, the figure was gone. My breath stuck in my throat. "Aunt June?" I whispered. "I think I saw someone out there." She turned slowly. "Where?" "By those trees," I said, pointing. He was just standing there. Her face tightened, but she tried to smile. "It's probably just one of the neighbors. Folks hike through here sometimes." But her voice shook. And 10 minutes later, my dad came inside and locked the door. Thunder rolled in around 10 p.m. The storm hit fast sheets of rain, flashes of lightning that lit up the lake, wind that rattled the cabin walls. We were all inside, board games forgotten, TV off, lights dim. Every boom of thunder jolted my nerves. At some point, I don't know when exactly, I got up for water. The storm had eased a little. Rain tapped gently on the windows now instead of crashing sideways. That's when I heard it. A sound outside. A low crunch. Footsteps. Wet footsteps on gravel. I froze. The sound moved along the porch. Slow, deliberate. Then, the screen door creaked. Not a soft breeze. Not an animal. It was the distinct metallic squeal of the cabin's old screen door. The one that always squeaked. The one that my aunt never fixed. My breath caught. I backed away instinctively. Then my dad appeared from the hallway, finger to his lips. He motioned me behind him. We both stood still, listening. A full 5 seconds passed. Then, a soft knock. Not loud, not violent. A slow, deliberate knock. Dad stepped closer to the door. "Who's out there?" he called. No answer. He raised his voice. I said, "Who's out there?" Still nothing. Then, from the other side of the door, a low male voice, shaky and hoarse. "I need help." Dad did not open the door. "What kind of help?" he asked. The man's breathing hitched, like he was trying to steady it. "Just open up." His tone changed on the last 2 words. I felt it. My dad felt it. The whole house felt it. Something was wrong. Dad stepped closer but didn't unlock anything. "You need to step off the porch. Then tell me what's going on." Silence. Then a sudden heavy thump against the door like someone trying to push it lightly, testing it. My mom gasped from the hallway. Dad raised his voice again. "You need to leave. Right now." Then, a whisper. "Kids found my gun." Ice slid down my spine. He knew. He knew we found it. And then, so fast I barely had time to register it. The door handle jiggled. Dad shoved his weight against it. "Go," he yelled. "Get off my property." Heavy footsteps retreated across the deck, down the stairs, into the darkness. We heard them fade toward the woods. My dad didn't move from the door for over a minute. None of us did. Finally, he whispered, "Call the sheriff." The deputies came within 15 minutes. Sirens off, flashlights out, guns drawn. They searched the entire property. The woods, the beach, the dunes, even under the cabin. They never found him, but they were dead serious now. Mulligan pulled my dad aside. "We ran that serial number," he said. "That gun belonged to a guy involved in multiple robberies across the U.P. Shot a clerk in Marquette. Been missing since January." My dad rubbed his temples. "And he's here now?" "He never crossed state lines," Mulligan said. "We figured he drowned or skipped town, but..." He glanced at the woods. "Looks like he's been hiding out." My mom asked the question no one wanted to say out loud. "Why here?" The deputy looked at the lake, at the tall grass, at the dark line of pines swaying under the storm clouds. "This area's quiet," he said. "Plenty of cover. And if he buried the weapon..." He paused. "He planned to come back." My aunt shuddered. "But why approach the house?" Mulligan's jaw tightened. He probably thought the kids still had something he needed. That was when Lena started crying silently beside me. I put my arm around her, unsure how to comfort her because I was shaking too. The deputies told us to pack up. We left that night. We didn't even finish the week. For months afterward, I had nightmares. The sound of that screen door squeaking still crawled into my dreams. Rain still made me flinch. The thought of someone watching from the trees still made my skin crawl. The robber, the man whose voice haunted the porch, was never caught. Not officially. But a few months after that summer, Hunters found a makeshift lean-to deep in the woods, about 3 miles from the cabin, half collapsed, covered in old blankets and food wrappers. They said it looked abandoned for weeks. Beside it, they found footprints leading toward the lakeshore. And nothing else. Some people believed he drowned. Some said he hitched a ride out during tourist season. Some whispered he was still out there somewhere, hiding in the Upper Peninsula like a ghost in the trees. But my dad believed something different. The man wasn't after money anymore, he told me years later. He wasn't hiding from cops. He was trying to get back what connected him to the crime. He paused, staring into the woods behind our house. And when kids found it instead of him, that changed things. I don't know what scares me more. The idea that he escaped, or the idea that he didn't. Either way, I still remember his voice at the door. Kids found my gun, and every time I visit Birch Hollow, every time I drive past those woods near Clearwater Cove, I swear the trees still feel like they're watching. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind moves just right, the screen door squeak echoes in my memory. I grew up in a dusty little dot on the map called Redwood Crossing, tucked into the high plains between northern Colorado and southern Wyoming. If you blinked driving down County Road 16, you'd miss it just a gas station, a diner, a post office the size of a classroom, and a spread of double wides sitting on hardpan dirt that never grew a damn thing except cheatgrass. People like to say Redwood had character, but that was just a nice way of saying we didn't have anything else. I was raised by my mom, Lorna, who worked nights at the diner and slept during the day. She wasn't the strict type. She didn't care if I rode my bike out past the cattle guard or stayed out late with my friends or hung around the creek bed shooting cans. But there was one rule she never budged on. No matter how laid back she usually was, don't go anywhere near the Granger house. She said it every year, every summer, every time I even looked toward the north edge of town. The Granger house wasn't even a house. It was a rusted-out trailer with a half-collapsed porch sitting just past the tree line. The man who lived there, Earl Granger, collected junk, tinkered with broken engines, dug through dumpsters behind the grocery store, and kept to himself. He only came into town after dark, always wearing that same camo jacket and old Vietnam cap so faded you could barely read U.S. Army. People in Redwood Crossing talked about him in that nervous way kids talk about thunderstorms, half frightened, half fascinated. Some said he was dangerous. Some said he was crazy. Some said he was harmless. And some, mostly the oldest folks, said he'd killed someone back when they were all teenagers. I didn't know which version was true. All I knew was that my mom's voice always changed when she talked about him. It went tight, thin, like she was holding her breath. When I was 13, I asked her why. She didn't answer. When I was 14, I asked again. Still nothing. But when I turned 17, everything changed. And by the end of that year, I learned the truth, the real truth, and it ruined my family forever. The story really starts one July evening when I was sitting with my friends Jax, Cole, and Ryder behind the old community center, roasting cheap hot dogs on a little fire pit we'd made out of an old metal bucket. Jax's mom was giving us a ride later, so she dropped by to check on us. She was the kind of woman who knew every rumor in Redwood Crossing, mostly because she helped start half of them. Jack said, "Mom, tell them about Earl. Tell him about how he..." His mom cut him off real fast. "Hey now, don't go spreading that crap," she snapped, waving her cigarette. "That man just wants to be left alone. But he killed. That's enough, Jackson." Her voice changed on a dime. Her eyes hardened. Her shoulders went stiff. I saw the switch happen like a mask slipping over her face. Something about it bothered me. It felt wrong, forced, like she didn't want us knowing something, or didn't want to admit something. When she walked away, Jax whispered, "Dude, she never talks like that. I think she knows something." He wasn't wrong. But at 17, I didn't have the maturity to process truth slowly. I jumped straight to anger, straight to blame, straight to revenge, because by then I'd heard my mom's version of the story, and it was bad enough to twist my stomach in knots. It happened on a cold Friday night in October. I came home from hanging out with my friends to find my mom sitting at the kitchen table, drunker than I'd ever seen her. She had old Polaroids scattered out in front of her, pictures from her teenage years. I recognized her right away. Younger, freckles, long dark hair. But one guy in the photos kept showing up, a tall kid with messy blonde hair and a grin that stretched across his whole face. His name was Trevor Hale. I'd heard his name before. He was the kid Earl supposedly killed. My mom was crying quiet at first, then loud and shaking. I'd never seen her like that. I sat down across from her. "Mom," I said gently, "what happened? Tell me the truth about Earl." She looked up at me. Mascara smudged under her eyes, hands trembling. "You're too young." "Mom, I'm 17. She choked on a breath. Then another. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, she whispered, "Trevor was murdered." She stared down at the table like the memory was carved into the wood. He was out at Lake Brenton with a group of friends, drinking, screwing around. He wandered off to take a leak, and when he came back, he saw someone carrying a small girl over their shoulder. He thought it was a kidnapping. He shouted and ran toward them. She wiped her face. The guy turned around and shot him dead, right there. My stomach twisted. "And the girl?" I asked. Mom's lips trembled. "She died later. They said she had tranquilizers in her system. A lot. Too much." "Why would someone do that?" I whispered. Mom shook her head. "They say Earl was seen walking through the trees that night, and everyone knew he hunted squirrels after dark. They said he panicked, shot Trevor, dumped the girl, walked home like nothing happened. Then why wasn't he arrested?" Mom's jaw tightened. "Small towns. Protect their own. His military record helped. Some folks just didn't want to believe he'd do it. But you believe it." She swallowed hard. "I know what I saw. I know what everyone saw. What she saw didn't quite make sense, but I was 17. Angry, impulsive, stupid in that teenage way that makes you think your emotions are the truth. From that night onward, I hated Earl. Every time I passed the north end of town, every time I saw that broken trailer at the tree line, every time I thought about my mom crying, that hate grew stronger, until the night I finally snapped. I told my friends what Mom told me. Jack shook his head. Cole cursed under his breath. Ryder kicked a rock and muttered, "Dude deserves hell." But it wasn't until a week later, sitting around another late-night fire, that the idea came out of my own mouth. "I'm gonna burn Earl's trailer down." The words just spilled out. My friends stared at me like I'd grown horns. "You serious?" Cole asked. "Yes," I said. "If the cops won't do anything, I will." It was stupid, dangerous, insane, but I thought it would be simple. Burn the place. Force Earl to run. Make him leave Redwood Crossing forever. I didn't want to kill him. I just wanted my mom's pain to stop echoing in our house. I wanted justice. Stupid teenage justice. The kind that ruins everything. I couldn't afford gas, so I stole a metal can of industrial thinner from the high school art room and hid it in my backpack. I waited until a night when my friends and I had our usual fire behind the community center. I told them I was heading home. Then I turned and walked north instead, toward the trees, toward the lake, toward Earl's trailer, toward the truth. It took almost an hour to reach the other side of Lake Brenton. The moon was bright enough to walk without a flashlight, and every crunch of gravel beneath my boots made my heart thud harder. The closer I got to Earl's trailer, the colder the night felt. No lights, no movement, just the creaking of trees in the wind. I crouched behind a big juniper and watched the place for almost 40 minutes. Nothing. Silence. Maybe he was asleep. Maybe he wasn't home. Finally, I stepped out from behind the tree, unscrewed the cap on the thinner, and click, a sound behind me. Sharp, hard, familiar. A gun. I froze. Then a low voice said, "What you got there, kid?" My blood turned to ice. I didn't move, didn't breathe. He stepped closer, the beam of a small flashlight cutting across the ground. It hit the metal can. He understood instantly. "Drop it," Earl said softly. I did. "Turn around." I couldn't. My legs refused. He stepped closer, grabbed my shoulder, and spun me around. When he saw my face, really saw me, he froze. His arm dropped. The gun lowered. A strange look crossed his face. A sad one. "You're Lorna's boy," he said quietly. My breath caught. He knew my mom. He knew me. Earl looked me over, eyes tired and sunken. "I figured you'd come eventually." It made no sense. "Why?" I croaked. He sighed and gestured toward his trailer. "Come inside, I'll tell you." Everything in me screamed to run, but something in his voice, a heaviness, held me still. So I followed him inside, and that decision changed my entire life. Inside Earl's trailer smelled like oil, dust, and old coffee. Not rotten or dirty, just worn out, lived in. He pointed to a chair. "Sit." I did. He poured us both water. Then he said, "Tell me what your mom told you." So I did. Every detail, every accusation. He didn't interrupt, didn't get angry, didn't defend himself. When I finished, he let out a long, heavy breath. "All right," he said softly. "Now I'll tell you what really happened, and what he told me, I will never forget, not as long as I live." He wasn't stalking teenagers that night. He wasn't carrying a child. He wasn't hiding in the brush. He was walking home from hunting small game, something he did most nights because money was tight and squirrel stew was cheap protein. The moon was bright. He saw a group of drunk teens near the lake. He kept his distance, didn't want trouble. But then he noticed one of them carrying something limp, small, with long dark hair. A child. He crept closer, thinking maybe she'd passed out or needed help. Then he heard them laughing, talking about doing something funny, something messed up. One voice stood out. My mom's friend Trevor Hale. Before Earl could react, Trevor raised a knife, aiming it toward the girl's chest. "I didn't think," Earl whispered to me. "I didn't have time." He fired twice. Trevor fell. The others ran. Earl grabbed the unconscious girl and carried her 2 miles into town, straight to the 24-hour gas station. The clerk called 911. The girl survived the night, but the tranquilizers in her system had shut down her organs. She died the next morning. The police questioned Earl. His story matched the evidence. The remaining teens changed their story under pressure. Every teen, except one, my mom, she stuck to the lie. Stuck to the version that made Trevor look like a hero. Stuck to the version that made her look innocent. Because she'd been drinking. She'd run. She'd panicked. And she didn't want her life ruined. So she let Earl take the blame. She let the town whisper about him for decades. She let me grow up hating the only man who did the right thing. Earl asked me for one favor. "Ask your mom," he said. "Look her in the eye. Ask her what really happened." So I did. And what happened next? I won't describe every word. I don't want to relive it. But I will say this. She broke down. She confessed. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to confirm what Earl told me. Enough to shatter everything I believed about her. "Why didn't you tell the truth?" I whispered. She sobbed into her hands. "I was scared," she said. "I didn't want my life to be over. But his life was over," I shouted. "You ruined his." She looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize, full of guilt, regret, and a kind of selfish fear I'd never seen in her before. Our relationship never recovered, not even close. I left Redwood Crossing at 18 and never looked back. It's been almost 20 years. I haven't seen my mother since. The day before I left town, I walked out to Earl's trailer one last time. He was sitting outside on a folding chair, sharpening a pocket knife. He looked up as I approached. "Figured you'd come," he said. I nodded, staring at the dirt. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "for trying to burn your place, for believing the wrong things, for everything." He shook his head. "You were a kid," he said softly. "Kids believe what they're told. It's the grown-ups who should have known better." I swallowed hard. "Why did you stay?" I asked. "Why not move? Start over somewhere else?" Earl looked toward the lake. "Because leaving doesn't fix guilt," he said. "Even when it isn't yours." I didn't know what to say. After a long silence, he added, "You're a good kid. Don't let Redwood turn you into someone you're not." We shook hands. I left. And Earl Granger, the man my town called a monster, The man my mom blamed her whole life. The man I almost killed. He nodded at me with a kind of sad pride. That's the last memory I have of him. People say small towns forget. They don't. Small towns bury things, hide them, pretend they never happened. But truth doesn't rot like wood or rust like metal. It waits. It follows. It shows up in your dreams, in your doubts, in the quiet places of your mind. And every time I picture that rusted trailer by the tree line, I feel a knot in my chest. Because I almost destroyed the only good man in Redwood Crossing. Because my mom ruined his life. Because everyone let it happen. And because now, at 37 years old, I finally understand the one thing Earl wanted me to learn. Monsters aren't always the people we fear. Sometimes, they're the people we trust. I never thought a simple road trip would mess with my head for the rest of my life. But that's usually how these things go. Ordinary moments turning into the ones that split your life into a before and an after. Back in the fall of 2004, I was 24, still living in Chicago, still trying to figure out what I wanted out of my life. My boyfriend at the time, Robbie, was the complete opposite: steady job, steady plans, steady everything. He wasn't the love of my life, but he was the kind of guy who'd bring you cough syrup at 4 a.m. without complaint. We'd been dating for almost a year when he said he wanted me to go meet his folks in person over in Harrow Creek, a small town tucked on the northern border of Nebraska. I'd heard the name before. Harrow Creek was one of those dots on a map you wouldn't notice unless your car broke down right in front of the sign. Robbie used to joke that the most exciting thing in that town was the broken Coke machine outside their post office. He laughed about it. I didn't. Small towns never sat right with me. Something about the way everyone knows everyone, the way strangers are clocked the second they step out of their cars. It always made my skin prickle. But I didn't want to disappoint him. Robbie was sweet, and I wanted to make a good impression. So that morning, we packed up his faded blue Pontiac with snacks, water bottles, and gas station CDs, then pulled out onto I-88 just as the sun was climbing up behind the skyline. For the first couple hours, we talked about everything: work, plans, random jokes, but somewhere past Davenport, we settled into a comfortable silence, the kind where the only sound is the steady hum of the engine, and the only movement is the blur of cornfields outside your window. But that day, the cornfields changed. They always do. Sure, sometimes tall, sometimes low, sometimes just flat dirt depending on the season. But that morning, right around 12:45 p.m., the scenery around us didn't shift gradually. It changed all at once, like someone had slapped a new backdrop behind the highway. 1 second we were surrounded by endless green. The next, it was like driving into a nightmare. Everything, and I mean everything, was black, charred, crisp, dead. Acres and acres of farmland reduced to smoking skeletons. Telephone poles burned down to stumps. Soil so dark it looked wet. I straightened up in my seat. Robbie, what the hell happened here? He didn't even look up from the road. Probably a controlled burn, he muttered. Farmers do that all the time. Not like this, I whispered, because this wasn't a little fire to turn old crops. This was a field that looked like it had been bombed. A cold shiver crawled up my spine, and for no reason I could explain, I rolled my window up the rest of the way. When the smoke thinned and the view opened up, I saw the first thing I will never, ever forget. 2 figures far out in the distance walking across the ruined field. At first, they looked harmless, almost sweet, even. A man and a little boy, hand in hand, their silhouettes clean against the pale horizon. They were walking toward something, though I didn't know what at the time. The man looked like he was in his 60s or 70s. He wore worn-out denim overalls and a long-sleeved shirt rolled up to his elbows. His hair was thin, scattered like fine gray straw across the top of his head. The boy, though he stood out, small, maybe 7 or 8, bright, curly, almost white hair, sky blue t-shirt, white sneakers. He looked like he didn't belong in that landscape of ash. I didn't say anything right away. Robbie was relaxed, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel to some old classic rock tune, and I didn't want to break the quiet. So I just watched as we drove closer and closer. At first, I assumed they were just checking out the damage. Maybe the man owned this land. Maybe they were surveying it, talking about the fire, or whatever farmers do after something goes wrong. But something felt off, like they weren't inspecting anything, like they were headed somewhere specific. And that's when I saw it. A circular opening in the ground, concrete rim, low wall, dark inside. A well. That tiny boy. He was toddling straight toward it with the man guiding him along. My heart started to pound. "Robbie," I whispered. "Slow down a second." But it was too late. We were already pulling alongside the field where they stood. We were close enough to see everything. The old man stepped up to the well, lifted the boy by his waist, and with one fluid, horrifying motion, he tossed him into the darkness, like he weighed nothing. My scream ripped out of me before I even knew it was coming. "Oh my God!" Robbie jerked the wheel. "Jesus. What happened?" I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. I scrambled in my bag for my phone, knocking chips and napkins everywhere. "Stop the car," I yelled. "Stop a kid he just threw. He threw a kid down a damn well." Robbie blinked at me, eyes wide, confused. What are you talking about?" "Babe, what did you see?" I was shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. But when I pressed the screen, my stomach dropped. 0 bars. "Of course," I muttered. Of course, damn it." I forced myself to breathe. "Okay, town, nearest town, there has to be one. Grab the map." Robbie fumbled for the folded highway map stuffed in the door compartment. I snatched it, spread it out on my lap, hands trembling so bad I tore one of the creases in half. "Closest place is Harrow Creek, 5 miles. Okay, let's go. Just breathe, all right?" I didn't breathe. Not really. My chest felt like it was locked shut, the entire drive into town. I watched the rearview mirror like I expected that old man to come running over the barren fields and rip open the back door. But no one followed us. The world outside remained silent, empty, blackened. It wasn't until we hit the town limits, the peeling white sign reading, "Welcome to Harrow Creek, home of good folks and good coffee," that I realized how tightly I'd been gripping the passenger handle. The first building in sight was an old diner sitting just off the road. Millie's Table. Cute sign. Red paint. Neon open sign flickering like it was about to die. Robbie screeched into the lot, and I bolted out before the car even stopped rolling. When I burst through the diner doors, the little bell above the frame jingled so hard it sounded like it was trying to jump off its own hook. 10 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. A waitress behind the counter, mid-50s, hair in a bun, froze with a coffee pot mid-air. "You all right, hon? I need your phone, please. Now." Her expression sharpened. "Okay, sugar, right over here." She handed me the landline, and I punched 911 so fast I nearly cracked the button. 911, what's your emergency?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked anyway. I saw a man drop a boy down a well. We were driving past some burned fields on Highway 31. There's a well out there. And a kid. He threw him in. Please send someone, please." The diner went dead silent around me. People whispered. A fork clinked onto a plate. The dispatcher told me to wait. She'd send the sheriff. When I hung up, I felt my knees wobbling. I backed up and pressed a hand on one of the booths to steady myself. The waitress placed a cold glass of water in front of me. "Sweetheart, you're pale as a ghost. You sure you saw what you think you saw?" I swallowed. "Yes, 100%. One of the locals got up from his table, a tall, weather-worn man with a baseball cap and a limp. "You sayin' that happened out on Briggs' property?" "I don't know whose property it was," I said, my voice shaking. "Just burned farmland. Acres of it." He turned to another man. "Wasn't Briggs doing burns last week?" "Yeah," the guy nodded. "But nothing should be black like that." They all looked at each other, uneasy, confused. Then the man in the cap asked, "What'd this fella look like?" I described him. Dungarees, thin gray hair, heavy build, 70s. Maybe. It was quiet just long enough for my stomach to twist. Then the man whispered, "Sounds like Whit Radisson." A woman gasped. "No way." Whit never do something like that. He's got his grandson staying with him this week, someone else muttered. Their eyes darted between each other, like I'd dropped a bomb into the room. About 10 minutes passed before a sheriff's deputy walked in uniform a little too tight, sweat already beading on his forehead. He nodded to the waitress, then came over to me and Robbie. "Ma'am, I'm Deputy Holt. Let's step outside and talk, okay?" We went out. I retold the whole thing again. He gave me the look I was starting to hate, the one people give when they think you're exaggerating or flat out lying. Then the sheriff himself pulled up a man in his 60s, slow-moving, leathery face, wearing a tan hat that had definitely seen better days. He listened. He gave the same look. He radioed someone, waited, then came back to us. "Ma'am," he said, clearing his throat, "I just spoke with Mr. Radisson. He says he hasn't been near those fields today. Says he's been home with his grandson all morning." My jaw tightened. "He's lying." "Now, hold on," he said, palms open like I was a wild animal. "Let's not jump to conclusions. My deputy checked the well you mentioned, and it's empty." "Did he go down into it?" I demanded. "Well, no." "Did he check for water? Did he shine a flashlight down there? Did he look properly?" His jaw twitched. "Ma'am, you're upset. That's understandable. But you might have seen something wrong. Smoke does weird things to light. Optical illusions." "No," I snapped. "Don't do that. Don't gaslight me. I know what I saw." Robbie touched my shoulder gently. "Hey, maybe it did look different from the car." I moved away from him. This wasn't Somet, something to soften. Just then, a dusty pickup truck pulled into the diner's lot. A big man stepped out. Denim overalls, thinning hair. My blood turned to ice. "That's him," I whispered. The sheriff lifted a hand. "Whit." "Now wait a second. Who's saying I dropped my damn grandson down a well?" the man barked. He stomped around to the passenger side, opened the door, and helped out a little boy. A little boy with dark brown hair and a buzz cut. Not the boy I saw. Not even close. "This here's my grandson," the man growled. "Ain't no one getting dropped nowhere." Robbie whispered. "See? Maybe you just—" "No," I hissed. "The boy I saw had blonde curls, bright blonde." Deputy Holt scratched his head. "Sun can make hair look lighter." It wasn't the sun. It wasn't him. I could hear how desperate my voice sounded. And I hated it. But every fiber in my body screamed that something here was wrong, rotten, covered up. Sheriff Turner stepped aside and quietly pulled Robbie with him. They talked for a minute. Robbie came back pale. "Babe, let's go." "What? Why?" "The sheriff says if we stick around making accusations, they'll arrest you for public disturbance." My stomach dropped. Of course. Protect their own. Protect the narrative. Protect the illusion of a calm little town where terrible things don't happen. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to smile, forced myself to apologize, forced myself to get back in the car. Robbie pulled out slowly. As we passed the diner windows, every face inside stared at us. Not curious, not confused, just cold. When we got far enough to pick up a signal, I called the Nebraska Highway Patrol. Filed a report. Again and again. Every time, I got the same answer. "We investigated. Nothing to report. But I know what I saw. I still see it, years later, in dreams that jolt me awake. That tiny boy, weightless in the older man's hands. The arc of his body as he fell. The sudden vanishing into darkness. Sometimes, when I'm driving through quiet places at dusk, I swear I can hear a faint, distant splash, like something hitting water at the bottom of a well. But the worst part? 2 years later, Robbie and I broke up. Life went on. And one night, out of morbid curiosity, I looked up Harrow Creek online. The first article that popped up was from a small-town newspaper. Local farmer Whit Radisson passes away at 78, survived by daughter, son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. Only 2 grandchildren. Both of them boys. Both of them brunettes. No mention anywhere of a little blonde child ever being part of the family. Which means I didn't mix them up. I didn't mistake one kid for another. I saw a stranger. A child that wasn't supposed to be there. A child that town didn't acknowledge. A child that vanished. And Harrow Creek made damn sure nobody would ever find him. I always thought the worst thing that could ever happen in our little town of Red Hollow was a tractor accident or a bar fight gone sideways. When you grow up somewhere quiet enough to hear your neighbor sneeze through their kitchen window, your mind naturally drifts toward the simple stuff early mornings. Muddy boots, the smell of diesel, the same 2 diner specials, and church bells on Sunday that ring even if nobody inside can carry a tune. Red Hollow sits tucked between a rundown rail line and an endless sea of cornfields in northern Missouri, a place where everybody knows everybody else's secrets, except the darkest ones. And the darkest one in our town didn't show its face until the year I turned 20. My name is Caleb Rourke, and before all of this happened, the most dramatic thing in my life was trying to fix the starter on my dad's old Ford before it got too cold outside. I grew up on our family farm off County Road 19. A dusty stretch you'd miss if you blinked too long. I wasn't a bad kid, just quiet. The kind of quiet that made teachers think I was either shy or suspicious, probably both. Dad had me helping with chores since I could walk. Mom homeschooled me until 8th grade. And after that, I just stayed on the farm full-time because that's the way things worked around here. My little sister, Jenny, was the complete opposite of me. Where I was all silence and shrugged shoulders, she was pure sunshine, bright, curious, always humming something. She'd only just started 5th grade at Red Hollow Schoolhouse, a tiny brick building that held maybe 30 kids total. Life was simple, predictable, peaceful, until the day it wasn't. It was October 14th, a Tuesday. Cold enough that you could see your breath, warm enough that you didn't complain. Dad and I were checking the fence line along the south pasture when the sound of a distant siren broke the calm. In Red Hollow, sirens are rare, like seeing a wolf in town rare. Dad stopped mid-step. "Caleb, you hear that?" "Yeah," I said. "Sounds like it's coming from the town road." Dad frowned. "Ain't normal. Sheriff's truck, maybe?" But the siren wasn't just passing through. It stopped, and it stopped near the school. Dad and I locked eyes. Something prickled in my gut, a feeling I didn't yet understand but still remember like a bruise. Dad muttered, "Lord Almighty," and started jogging back toward the truck. We weren't more than 100 yards from the gate when I spotted someone sprinting down the road toward our farm, legs pumping, arms stiff like he didn't know what to do with them. Dad squinted. "Who the heck?" "Caleb. That's Josh." Josh was my sister's classmate, 12 years old, skinny as a twig, and usually polite enough to wave when passing our place. But now, he was running like something was chasing him. Dad shouted, "Josh, hey, over here, son." Josh didn't slow until he reached the fence. He leaned on the post, gasping for air, shaking so hard I thought he might fall over. Dad grabbed him gently by the shoulders. "Josh, talk to me. What happened?" Josh pointed back toward the road, voice cracking like something inside him had broken. There's a man at the schoolhouse. He's got a gun, Mr. Rourke. He told us to sit down and not move. He had a bag with chains." Dad's face drained of color. "Where's my sister?" I asked, stepping forward. Josh swallowed hard. "She's inside." Dad didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward his truck, yelling, "Caleb, get your mother. Tell her to lock the door." I watched him shove the truck door open like he meant to rip it clean off its hinges. I swear I'd never seen Dad scared. Not once. But right then, he was terrified. Josh grabbed my sleeve. "He ain't right, Caleb," he whispered. "The man?" He kept saying stuff under his breath. Weird stuff. Like, "Not again. Not this time." "What do you mean, not again?" Josh shook his head violently. "I don't know. But he locked the front door with boards. Like he planned it. Like he'd been thinking about it for a long time." My stomach twisted. It hit me then just how real this was. I ran back to the house so fast my legs burned. Mom opened the door before I even reached it. "What's happening?" she asked, voice thin. I couldn't get the words out at first. "School. A man. Gun." Jenny's still there. She grabbed her mouth with both hands, eyes wide with horror. She whispered, oh God, no." Outside, Dad's truck peeled out of the driveway so fast gravel shot everywhere. He'd always been careful. Slow driver, patient man. Not today. About 10 minutes later, maybe less, maybe more, we heard the first crack of gunfire echo across town. Mom fell to her knees. Josh, still shaking, whispered. He started yelling before I ran. Something about wanting to talk to God himself. Said God owed him. Said the girls would understand. Girls, not boys. My blood ran cold. Mom whispered, "Please, please let my baby be all right." I held her, but my hands were shaking too hard to do much good. I didn't know it then, but this is what Dad and the others told us once everything was over. Earlier that morning, a pickup truck had rolled up to the schoolhouse. The man inside, a stranger no one recognized, walked in carrying a tool bag. He asked the teacher if she'd seen something he lost in the road. She said no. He nodded, left, then came back with a pistol. He ordered the boys to carry lumber, nails, chains, and extension cords into the classroom. He barricaded the doors. He let the boys and 3 adults go. He kept the girls. He lined them against the chalkboard like they'd done something wrong. He talked to himself. He talked to God. He talked to the 911 dispatcher. And then he started shooting. More sirens screamed through the town. Red Hollow wasn't big. We only had 2 sheriff deputies and 1 old EMT van, so the backup had to come from Shelby County. Mom was crying into her hands. Josh sat at the kitchen table staring at the wall like he wasn't really there. The phone rang. Mom jumped a mile. It was Dad. I picked up. "Dad? Is Jenny?" "Caleb," Dad said, breathless, voice trembling in a way I'd never heard. "Listen to me. They ain't gone in yet. The sheriff's talking to him through a bullhorn. The man keeps shouting back. Says he wants to undo something. Undo what? I don't know. But he said he wasn't leaving alive." I heard clattering in the background radios, shouting, boots on gravel. Dad whispered, "Son, he's hurting those girls. They're bringing stretchers. I don't know if..." A deafening gunshot cut him off. Then another. Then 3 more in rapid succession. Dad yelled something, but the phone cut out. Mom cried, "Is she alive?" "Please, Caleb, did he say anything about Jenny?" I didn't know. Not yet. About 15 minutes later, though, it felt like an hour, Dad's truck came racing down the road. He parked sideways in the yard, stumbling out, face pale, hands bloody. Mom screamed, "Where is she?" Dad shook his head, tears sliding down his cheeks. "She's alive," he said. "But she's hurt. They took her to the county hospital. We gotta go. We gotta go now." We tore down the highway so fast the truck vibrated. Dad ran every stop sign. No one cared. When we arrived, the ER was chaos. Deputies, nurses, crying parents, blood on the floor tiles, the metallic smell of trauma everywhere. A nurse approached us. "You're the Rourkes?" Mom nodded frantically. "Your daughter is stable," the nurse said. "She has a gunshot wound to the shoulder. She's sedated. She'll need surgery, but she's going to make it." Mom collapsed into Dad's arms, sobbing with relief. I felt my knees go weak. But not every parent in that hallway got the same news. Some collapsed in a different way. Some screamed. Some stared blankly. Some fell against the wall like their bones had turned to dust. It's a sound I still hear at night sometimes. A sound nobody should ever hear. Later, the sheriff held a briefing. The man's name was Raymond Hale, age 42. He lived 3 towns over. He drove a gravel truck. Had 1 arrest years ago for disorderly conduct. Nothing else. But what he wrote in the letter found in his truck explained everything in a twisted way. He had lost his infant daughter 10 years earlier. He blamed God. He blamed himself. He blamed the world. He wanted to take something back. To even the scales. To show God what real loss feels like. It made me sick. Dad clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. Mom whispered, "That man wasn't sick. He was evil." Jenny survived. She healed, slowly, surgeries, physical therapy, nightmares. But the town? It didn't heal the way I expected. Some folks forgave him. God sees all, they said. God judges. God forgives those who repent. But I couldn't. I just couldn't. The idea of forgiving someone who walked into a classroom with chains and guns and intentions worse than hell itself? No, not me. Dad struggled too. He tried to hide it, but I saw him sitting in the barn at night staring at nothing. Mom prayed harder than ever, but sometimes her voice broke mid-sentence. Jenny wouldn't talk about it for a long time. When she finally did, all she said was, "He looked sad, Caleb. Sadder than anybody I've ever seen." That hurt worse than anything, because sadness is not an excuse for evil. The schoolhouse was demolished within the week. They didn't want it standing, didn't want the stain of it casting a shadow every time the sun hit it right. But even after it was gone, the feeling stayed, that something like this could happen anywhere, even in a place as small and quiet and forgotten as Red Hollow. I moved away a year later. Couldn't breathe right in that town anymore. Every siren, every slammed truck door, every loud pop in the distance made my whole body freeze. But the memory followed me anyway, and the lesson followed too. Evil doesn't care how small your town is. It doesn't care how peaceful your life feels. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just arrives. Sometimes in a pickup truck, sometimes carrying a tool bag, sometimes wearing the face of a man you would have never looked twice at in the grocery store, and sometimes it walks straight into a classroom, and only God knows why. I never used to believe that a single night could break a man. Folks in our part of the world always said that people bend. They don't snap, not unless they let themselves. But the truth is, I didn't have a choice. That night in Redwater, South Carolina, something bent me until it felt like bone grinding against bone, and I've never been the same since. Redwater wasn't much bigger than a football field. Couple hundred folks, few dozen trailers, a scattering of old bungalows left over from the textile boom that died before I was born. And on the south end of the highway sat the place where I worked, Benton's Diner, a squat white building with chrome siding, fluorescent lights that always buzzed, and a neon red sign that flickered like it had asthma. I'd been working nights there for almost 9 years, cooking, cleaning, breaking up the occasional drunk argument, serving coffee that tasted like burnt mud to truckers who'd pull in half dead and stumble out revived. My name's Reed Layton, by the way, 34 at the time, divorced, broke, tired, and the only person I loved in Redwater was my sister Ellie. She was the reason I never left. Her health wasn't great, and she needed someone around. So I stayed. I cooked in that diner. I survived each month by a thread, and I pretended my life meant something. But the truth? Nothing prepared me for June 11th, 2011. The night the diner closed forever. The night I lost more than I thought possible. The night we met the man who walked into Benton's and turned a quiet southern town into a nightmare. The storm had rolled out an hour earlier. The parking lot was wet and reflecting the neon sign like blood-soaked chrome. I was wiping down the counter when Sheriff Tom Hadley walked in, stomping rain off his boots. He was a big man with a big voice and a small amount of patience. "Evenin', Reed," he said, sliding onto a stool. "You want the usual?" "Yeah. Extra onions this time." "Don't tell my wife." I smirked. "Ain't my business what you tell Miss Hadley." "That's right," he said. "And don't you forget it." I cooked his burger, listening to the radio crackle behind me and the buzz of the lights overhead. Everything was normal, perfectly normal. If someone had walked in right then and told me that in less than 2 hours I'd be stepping over bodies, I would have laughed. I mean, hell, nothing bad ever happened in Redwater. We weren't that kind of place, but we were about to be. It was a little after 10:30 when he came in. I remember the bell on the door jingling softly, and I looked up expecting another trucker or a couple locals grabbing pie. Instead, I saw him, tall, soaking wet, clothes dark like they were stained, face calm, too calm, like someone who'd rehearsed his expressions before walking inside. He didn't sit right away, just stood there, blinking slow, looking around the diner like he was memorizing it. I gave him my usual welcome. "Evenin', man. Take any seat you want." He didn't answer, just walked to the booth in the far corner and sat with his back to the window. I grabbed a menu and walked over. "What can I get you?" He didn't look at the menu. He just said, "You open till midnight?" "Yeah." "You get a lot of travelers this time of night?" I shrugged. "Depends. Highway's slow tonight." He nodded. "So it's just us in here?" Yeah, you and the sheriff over there." He didn't even glance toward Hadley. Then he said something that stuck with me every hour afterward. "Good. I don't like crowds." He said it flat, no emotion, no smile, nothing. Just good. Like he was relieved. Like crowds were a problem for what he had planned. When I reached for my pen, I noticed his hands. They were shaking. Not like someone cold. More like someone fighting adrenaline. The kind of tremor someone gets after something, not before. "Y'all all right?" I asked him. He nodded once. "Yeah, coffee." "That all?" "For now." But he didn't look like a man who wanted coffee. He looked like a man sitting in a quiet room after breaking something big. I poured the guy's coffee, brought it over, and set it on the table. He didn't touch it, just stared at the steam. When I walked back to the counter, Sheriff Hadley leaned in and said quietly, "That fella look off to you?" I shrugged. "Kinda." "Why?" "He came into the station looking for directions maybe an hour ago. Asked me about motels. Asked if our county had any roadblocks. Asked if we had many cops on duty tonight." I froze. Why would he ask that? That's what I'm trying to figure. The sheriff slid his half-eaten burger away. "Reed, listen, go real easy around him. Don't piss him off. I'm gonna call Deputy Lloyd to swing by." "You want me to stall him?" "No. You ain't stalling nobody. Just serve him. Keep it normal." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the worry growing in my gut. Something about the man in the corner was wrong. Dangerous wrong. A few minutes later, the stranger finally reached for something, but not his coffee. His hand went under the table, and when it came up I saw the glint of metal. A knife. Small, sharp, black-handled. He set it on the table like it was nothing, like it was a spoon. Hadley saw it too. His hand went slowly to his holster, but the stranger spoke first, loud enough for the whole diner. "You don't want to do that, Sheriff." Hadley froze. My heart dropped straight through the floor, because that was the moment everything in the diner changed. The stranger's voice was still calm, still level. But there was something else behind it now. Something cold and certain. "You touch that gun, and it'll go bad," he said. Hadley kept his hand hovering over the holster. "Why don't you tell me your name, son?" The stranger tilted his head. "Names don't matter. They matter to me." "No," the man said. "What matters is what's about to happen." Then he stood up. Slow, deliberate, and I saw something in his eyes that sent electricity through my ribs. He wasn't scared. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even unstable. He was focused, like he'd planned this, like he was following steps. When he lifted his jacket, I saw it. A pistol tucked into his waistband. He took it out with the same casual ease you might grab your wallet. "Hands where I can see him," he said. Hadley slowly raised his palms. "All right now," the sheriff said calmly. "No one here wants trouble." "You think this is about trouble?" the stranger asked. Then he looked at me. "You, behind the counter, come here." My legs locked. Locked. I'd never felt fear like that. Hadley said, "Reed, don't move." But the stranger's gun snapped toward the sheriff. "You talk again, I shoot first at you." Hadley quieted. I stepped out from behind the counter, shaking so hard I felt my teeth clacking. "Closer," he said. I moved until I could smell the rain still clinging to his clothes. And then he said the first thing that made me think this man wasn't here to rob anyone. He wasn't here for money. He was here for something else entirely. "Do you believe people are born guilty?" he asked me. I don't know." He nodded like that answer meant something to him. Then he pressed the gun to my forehead. I felt the cold metal, felt the tremble in his hand, felt the reality of it hit like a truck. "Tonight," he said quietly, "we're gonna find out." Sheriff Hadley yelled, "Put the gun down." The gun turned. Bang. The shot was deafening. Hadley fell backward off his stool, clutching his side and gasping. I screamed. The stranger didn't even flinch, just walked toward the sheriff with slow, peaceful steps. You should have stayed quiet, he murmured. I grabbed a coffee pot, God knows why, and threw it. It shattered behind him. He spun toward me. I froze. My vision tunneled. He walked back toward me, raising the gun. This part, he said softly, is where most people beg. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move, but he didn't shoot me. Instead, he grabbed me by the collar, dragged me across the diner, and shoved me into a booth. Hands out, he said. What? Hands out. When I raised them, he used zip ties, big thick ones he must have brought with him, to tie my wrists to the metal railing of the booth. Then he took the sheriff's radio off his belt and slid it across the floor far out of reach. And then he waited, like he was expecting someone. Headlights lit up the wet parking lot outside. Deputy Lloyd, right on time. The stranger smiled for the first time. I knew he'd come, he whispered. He walked to the front of the diner, gun ready. When Lloyd opened the door, the stranger fired before the kid could even react. One shot, straight into Lloyd's chest. The deputy fell against the jukebox, gasping. The stranger didn't even check to see if he was dead. He just locked the door and flipped the sign. Then he turned toward me again. You're gonna sit there, he said. And you're gonna bear witness. Witness to what? I begged. That's the part you'll understand at the end. The stranger walked back to the sheriff, who was still alive. Barely. Hadley clutched his wound and spat blood. You bastard, the sheriff growled. The stranger crouched beside him. You ever arrest someone innocent? He asked. Hadley winced. What the hell kind of question? Just answer. Every cop has, the sheriff admitted. But we do our best. The stranger nodded thoughtfully. I figured you'd say something like that. Then he stood up. You made me who I am, he said. I don't even know you. You don't, the stranger said. But your badge does. And then he shot Hadley. Twice. Point blank. I screamed again. Couldn't help it. The stranger walked back toward me, sat across from me in the booth like we were pals about to share pie. You want to know why? He asked. No, I whispered. I want you to leave. Please. Just leave. He leaned forward. Reed, this whole county is rotten. Your sheriff, your deputies, your courts. They framed me. Took 8 years of my life. 8 years. My stomach dropped. Framed. For what? For what? Murder, he said simply. A murder I didn't commit. And now you're... Oh, I'm guilty now, he cut in. Isn't that rich? A sick sort of humor glimmered in his eyes. They made me into what I am. Tonight I'm just giving it back. A car pulled into the parking lot. A minivan. I recognized it instantly. And so did he. Who's that? He asked. My sister, I whispered. He smiled. Well now, ain't that something? I pulled against the zip ties until my wrists bled. No, please, she doesn't have anything to do with this. Neither did I, he said calmly. He walked toward the entrance just as Ellie stepped out holding a box of muffins she promised she'd bring me. She saw the broken glass inside, then the body of Deputy Lloyd. She froze. Reed, she said, panicked. Reed? The stranger opened the door and grabbed her by the wrist before she could run. She screamed. He dragged her inside and shoved her next to me in the booth. She was shaking so violently I could hear her teeth chattering. Please, I begged. She didn't do anything. He nodded. I know. Then he leaned down to Ellie. You're gonna tell me something, he said softly. And your brother's life depends on it. She sobbed, eyes wide. Depends on what? What? He smiled gently. As a kid, did you ever break something and lie about it? Ellie blinked fast, confused. What? Why? Think, he said. Think, carefully. I don't know. He tapped the gun against her forehead. Think. My chest was burning. My throat tight. Stop, I shouted. What the hell is this? He ignored me. Ellie's voice shook. I broke a lamp once. Told my mom it fell. And how'd you feel? He asked. I don't know. Yes, you do. I felt bad, she whispered. Okay. I felt bad. He nodded with intense focus. Exactly. That's guilt. That's how it starts. And then if the world treats you like trash long enough, it turns into something else. Then he looked at me. That's what they did to me. Suddenly, flashing blue and red lights lit up the night outside. State police. Someone must have heard the shots. The stranger stepped back, gun raised, breathing harder now. He wasn't calm anymore. He was unraveling. He grabbed Ellie and pulled her up with him, keeping the gun to her neck. You're coming with me, he said to her. No, I yelled. Take me. I already have you, he said without looking back. Ellie screamed as he dragged her toward the back exit. State troopers shouted through megaphones. This is the South Carolina Highway Patrol. Drop your weapon. The stranger laughed, actually laughed. You hear that, Ellie? He whispered. They sound just like the men who ruined my life. At the back door, he shoved her forward. Run, he whispered to her. She hesitated, confused. I said run. She stumbled into the parking lot. He stepped out behind her. Just as the troopers opened fire, gunshots cracked across the asphalt. Sparks burst from the diner wall. Ellie dove behind a trash bin. The stranger staggered but didn't fall. He fired back wildly. But he wasn't the impossibly calm man from earlier. He was wounded, bleeding, desperate. A second volley of shots hit him square in the chest. He collapsed onto the wet concrete, gasping. The troopers surrounded him, guns trained. He looked at me through the diner window, and he smiled. I told you, he choked out. You'd understand. In the end, then his head fell back, and he stopped moving. The troopers burst inside, cut my restraints, and rushed to Ellie. She was shaking, crying, but alive. Sheriff Hadley didn't make it. Deputy Lloyd died in the ambulance, and Redwater lost the last bit of innocence it had left. 2 days later, investigators finally pieced together who the stranger was. Nathaniel Cray, age 39, wrongfully convicted of a gas station murder 8 years prior. Spent 7 years in prison before the real killer confessed to another inmate. Released. No family left. No home. No job. A man chewed up by the system until he became exactly what it feared. A man who walked into our diner not just to kill, but to force us to feel the weight of what he carried. Ellie still jumps at loud sounds. I still can't sleep without hearing that damn buzzer of the diner lights. And every night, I hear his words. Do you believe people are born guilty? I used to say no. Now, I think guilt is something life builds inside you, layer by layer, until the day it finally spills out, and someone like Nathaniel walks into your diner and makes you answer.